the fix.
Tonight's big hitter, former President Kgalema Motlanthe. He wants to pack a punch to grow the economy, but just how much weight will he carry with the current President Cyril Ramaphosa? The ANC's KwaZulu-Natal conference comes to a screeching halt.
I'm going to speak here tonight.
Where to next?
Stop. Don't swipe left, don't swipe right.
Young people are doing it for themselves, creating wealth and opportunity. Your fix starts now.
Good evening and welcome to The Fix. This is where every Sunday night, without fear or favor, we question the big hitters, look ahead to tell you what you will be talking about on Monday, and we go beyond politics and look at the cool stuff that South Africans are going to be talking about. But we begin with tonight's big hitter. Joining me on The Fix this evening is former President Kgalema Motlanthe. Former President Motlanthe, good evening. A big welcome to The Fix.
Well, good evening, Karima, and good evening to your viewers.
Now, of course, today in the Sunday Times, you have a fantastic opinion piece about the very issues that are very, very, very close to your heart. In fact, you say next weekend in the spectacular Drakensberg, you'll be playing host to a gathering of South African leaders from across all sections of society, including young people, to share ideas, build agreement, and of course, wherever possible, develop action plans to ensure that the potential of this decade is met. And then you say, very importantly, it is an express objective of what you call the Inclusive Growth Forum to bring together South Africans from a variety of sectors. Former President Motlanthe, why are you, now that you're out of office, getting involved in getting South Africa's economy growing?
Well, you know, the President Ramaphosa, in the State of the Nation address, ended his address by basically making a call to all of us as South Africans to step up to the plate and see what
Tumamina.
and work out, you know, what role we can play constructively to contribute to the development and prosperity of our country.
Now, of course, when you were planning this gathering that is going to be taking place next week, we've just had GDP figures coming out. They are not looking good. In fact, the economy has contracted, particularly in the mining sector. You come from that sector. In fact, you're a former General Secretary of the Mine Workers Union. How big an impact do you think that is going to have on our ability to grow the economy on the scale that President Ramaphosa is talking about?
Well, to grow the economy, we have to look at various sectors. The days of the mining industry being the sector for the entirety of the South African economy have long gone, and so today we've got to look at the fourth industrial revolution. We got to look at agriculture,
the service sector,
all these sectors. Of course, mining is not to be relegated to, you know, the back burner. We still have lots of deposits, and so those ought to be exploited and I dare say, beneficiated as well, so that, you know, we don't export just raw material.
In fact, let's just listen, former President Motlanthe, to President Ramaphosa tell us about his plans to attract that $100 billion to the South African economy.
Yeah.
Go out like a pack of hunting lions, where we have a pack of these lions going out to hunt down those investments for us.
That is, of course, the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, saying, go out as a pack of hunting lions. So are you going to be the lead hunter next week when you're going to be bringing people together? What is the main focus going to be? Is it going to be to try and get consensus, or is it going to get everyone to get off their behinds and roll up their sleeves and actually put shoulder to the wheel?
Well, we're hoping that, we will generate ideas which can lead to practical ways of solving our social problems, because at the moment we have, unfortunately, as you pointed out, the GDP shrinking by about 2%, and we have 27% of young people unemployed.
That's a conservative estimate, as you know, of course.
That's right. We have 55% poverty levels. And so these are serious social problems. But social problems are also opportunities, because if we find solutions to them, we would be able to change the situation in a
I
more
can see that
way.
you're part of those who understand the Chinese, where they say every crisis there's an opportunity.
That's
and
right.
of course there is a crisis in our economy.
Yes.
Let's get straight to the heart of how young people need to be drawn in. President Ramaphosa recently launched his Yes campaign, which of course is to get young people opportunities with companies. But many are very critical about the fact that they don't often get the right experience. It doesn't often lead to jobs. In fact, some of them run around and get, the laundry of the CEO and make some tea. You were in office. What was the biggest challenge that you think young people faced when they were going into companies to try and get practical experience and to get into the economy?
Well, there's no other way, effective way of training young people other than giving them responsibility. You see, we can appeal to them to behave responsibly. As long as they don't have responsibility, they will not know how to behave. And so the best and effective way of training them is to give them responsibility, guide them, support them, but give them the space to bring the energy of the youth and fresh ideas. That's the best way.
Now,
And I think half the time we as elders tend to transmit our own fears to young people and therefore judge them not to be ready and so on. And this is where we use the excuse that they don't have sufficient experience.
You're right. But we don't want to give them a start either.
That's right. We must give them responsibility. Yeah.
Now, this question around getting the economy to grow has a lot to do, of course, also with policy certainty.
Yes.
You were president, but you were also deputy president.
Yes.
We've had several changes in our government. In fact, last week, one of the ministers said that one of the reasons, for example, that the transport sector can't get its act together is because it has too many reshuffles, right? Your own take on the kind of policy certainty that is required. Let's start, for example, with the mining charter.
Well, just before we get into the mining charter, I think the National Development Plan speaks of a capable state. And in order for us to build a capable state, we must stop this practice of each minister appointing their own senior managers in departments and getting rid of those with institutional memory and experience as well as skills.
So let me ask you a direct question. Are you saying that when new ministers come in, that they should actually leave the directors generals that they find there, especially those who are in fact capable?
They should. In fact, the anomaly of giving the authority to ministers to appoint directors, generals, and other senior managers ought to be done away with.
What do you suggest in its
forthwith.
place?
Well, we have the Public Service Commission. The Public Service Commission can be given the responsibility to identify and put together a team of experts who will be tasked to recruit public employees and purely and simply on the basis of their professional expertise and qualifications. That's what will give us a capable state.
And of course, it's that consistency period. The thing that's always bugged me, former president, is the issue around the fact that ministers serves 5 years, but directors general 3 years. And of course, that disconnect already puts them at odds because the minister comes in, the director general finds his or her feet, and by the time they do that, their term is over.
Well, in other countries, that's why directors generals are referred to as permanent secretaries. Because you see, the state has got, if it is to be capable, it's got to be stable and outlive governments.
When you say
because
that,
governments come and go. Every 5 years you go into an election.
the state remains.
The state remains.
Now, of course, President Ramaphosa is very determined to make a smaller, meaner, leaner state. Now, we've often heard that from people who think that government shouldn't play a role in the economy. The ANC's never had that language, but yet President Ramaphosa is saying the ballooning state needs to come to an end. We actually need a smaller state, a meaner state. Give me your ideal size of a cabinet.
Well, ideally, you need a cabinet of about, at maximum, 34 ministers.
And when we talk about 34 ministers, do you think every minister should have a deputy?
No, not necessarily. The ministries which deserve to have even not only one but two deputy ministers is DERCO, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. For the simple reason that the minister would have too much on his or her plate,
Right.
and therefore would need a deputy to share the global responsibilities with the minister. And the second minister must be an administrative person who's going to anchor the head office back here at home, so that all the missions can receive proper support and service.
So if I understand you correctly, Mr. Motlanthe, you are effectively saying 34 ministers, not every ministry deserves a deputy. What are you saying also then about the terms of directors general? Should they, for example, have the same term as a minister? Should they serve for 5 years?
More than
What are we talking
the
about,
term of
7
a
years?
minister. But, if a person is young enough, you could work it out this way. Either when a person reaches retirement age, they go, and or you put a term of service, 15 years, for instance, whichever of the two that person reaches first, then they would have to step aside. But by and large, you need the state to be permanent and stable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the thing that is often the big question about the size of the state is the state bill, the wage bill.
Yeah.
We know in South Africa, because we have such an unequal country, the state is in fact the largest employer. We have a standoff now as it is between public sector workers and the Minister for Public Administration. How do we get the economy growing by making the state smaller?
Well, that's really not the first requirement to grow the economy. The state, and by state, I'm very clear that I'm referring to the bureaucracy, the military, the police, as distinct from the cabinet.
Right.
Yes, because cabinet or the executive will come and go. Executives come and go every 5 years. But the directors generals, the HODs, and all of those ought to remain in their place. And when there's an election, for instance, taking place, they should literally approach each and every political party contesting elections, ask for their manifesto, translate that manifesto into a 5-year action plan for their departments, and color code them, keep them under lock and key, and wait for the IEC to declare the elections. And once the elections are declared, if Party B has won the elections, there, from day 2,
Right.
they can hit the ground running because their manifesto has been translated into a program of action.
Absolutely.
for 5
Who
years.
says older people don't have radical ideas? That's, of course, a former President Motlanthe. I'm not done with the questions just yet. Up ahead, we look at how central land reform is to economic inclusion and growth. I will be back in dialogue with my big hitter, former President Kgalema Motlanthe. This is The Fix.